Bonjour tout le monde, c'est moi Charlotte et aujourd'hui nous allons regarder 7 verbes qui ont des participes passés irréguliers et qui prennent aussi le verbe être comme auxiliaire. Okay, so hello everyone, welcome to the video. We're looking at 7 verbs which have irregular past participles, and now these are verbs that use être, the verb être, as the auxiliary verb, so it's quite a specific list. I already did a video, my previous November 2020 video, on verbs that have irregular past participles that are used with the verb avoir. So here we're looking at something different. Let's start it off. So, as you hopefully know, there are in French some verbs which do not use avoir. So, for example, when you say a verb that takes avoir, j'ai mangé, voilà, j'ai mangé une pomme. J'ai mangé une pomme. When I have eaten an apple, for example, with the verb to eat, manger, you use the auxiliary verb avoir. So it's like in English saying I have eaten. J'ai mangé. So I have, j'ai is the present tense of I have, and then manger is just the regular past participle of the verb to eat. Manger, okay? So that's M-A-N-G-E with an accent aigu. So here we're looking at verbs that don't use avoir. We're looking at verbs that take être, okay? So, for example, regular past participles that take être would be something like je suis allé, okay? Je suis allé, let me write this down. So, aller is an ER verb. Aller, voilà, comme ça, d'accord? Sorry about the reflections, quite difficult to get the lighting right at the moment. So if you want to make the verb aller, which is the infinitive form, to go, into the past participle, you simply change that er to an I accent, comme ça. Par exemple, je suis allée au supermarché, je suis allée à la bibliothèque, je suis allée chez un ami, par exemple. Je suis allée. Let's get this so that you can see. Je suis allée. Tu es allé. Il est allé. Elle est allée. Nous sommes allés. Attention, parce que là, se passe quelque chose. So, if you're saying we went, this is important, any verb that takes être as the auxiliary, the ending of the past participle has to agree with the number and gender of whoever the subject is, right? That's a bit confusing. Nous sommes allés. So we add an S, for example, there in the we form. We add an S to the past participle. So that's the past participle of aller. We add an S because we're talking about we went. And there's more than one of us. Nous sommes allés. Just add an S. That's the same if you're saying you guys went, vous êtes allés, or they went, ils sont allés, elles sont allées, oh, elles sont allées. Look what happens if we're talking about they, a group of girls, les filles sont allées, right? So this is what happens. You add an extra E because we're talking about girls, makes it feminine, and then you add an S. Elles sont allées. So that's what happens. That's one regular past participle. So that's aller. So an ER verb, when you make the past participle, you change the ER ending to an I accent. But when you have a verb that's conjugated with être, if you're talking about moi par exemple, je suis allé, moi je suis allé au supermarché. I went, you add an extra E when you're writing it down, when it agrees with a feminine subject like moi par exemple, ou Anne est allée, Sarah est allée. And so if it's plural, like nous sommes allés, moi, Karine, Sarah et Mathilde, nous sommes allés. So that's an ER verb in its past participle. So there's quite a lot to remember. What happens if it's an IR verb? For example, partir. That's another one. To leave, like to leave a place. Not to leave your keys somewhere or your phone, but to depart from somewhere. So think of it as departing. So the past participle of this, it's a nice regular past participle, just changes to an I. Je suis partie, for example. Mais moi, je suis une femme, quoi. Donc, moi, je suis partie. So you add an E if it's talking about a girl. If it's we went, and we're girls, then you'd say nous sommes partis. Nous sommes partis. But imagine, just imagine, I'm a guy, and I'm in a bunch of guys, and we all went wherever we went, to the supermarket if you like. Nous sommes partis. Mais les filles sont parties. Okay? So the ending sounds the same. Parti, 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 parti. But in the written form, you have an extra E if it's feminine, and you have an S if it's plural, whether it's masculine or feminine. So you have various forms of this past participle. Okay, but the main thing is that you know that certain verbs like aller, partir are conjugated with être. So ER verbs that are regular go to E accent. IR verbs like partir just goes to an I, parti. And then what's the other one we have? Verbs that end in RE. For example, descendre, to go down. Je suis descendu la colline, par exemple. Descendre. So that's an RE verb that takes être. So the past participle, so that means to go down or to descend. The past participle is descendu. Oh, they're really annoying, aren't they, these reflections? Excusez-moi. Mais par exemple, tu es descendu. Tu es descendu l'escalier. Went down the stairs. Il est descendu la colline. Mais elle est descendue avec eux à la fin. Elle est descendue. So I know that's quite a lot to take in. First of all, you have to know the verbs that take être. I think I've done a video on this. If in doubt, look for verbs that take être as the auxiliary. Des verbes avec être comme auxiliaire. Okay, I'll put some tags under the video so that you can try and find what you're looking for online if you need some more info. But basically, ER verbs go to E accent, which is pronounced the same. Aller, aller. Partir becomes parti, or sortir becomes sorti. Descendre with an RE becomes descendu. Right, so forget the endings, the extra E and S, because when you're speaking, you don't often hear that difference, okay? Sometimes you do, not always. We're looking at 7 verbs today which have irregular past participles, so they don't follow the aforementioned structures. So it was quite hard to think of these verbs, but hopefully it will help you to understand. So let's have a look. The first one, I'm going to give you a sentence. Je suis né, moi je suis né au Royaume-Uni. Je suis né au Royaume-Uni. What am I saying there? I'm saying je suis né au Royaume-Uni. Je suis né. Let's get a little bit closer. Un peu plus proche là. Je suis né. I was born. Born, right? So let's have a look. We'll take that off there. Oh non, j'ai déchiré la page. Oh non, c'est pas grave. C'est pas grave. Rip the page a little bit there, but it's not a problem. So je suis né. So if you're a boy and you're telling someone where you were born or when you were born or blah blah blah. Je suis, you need the verb être as the auxiliary verb. And then you need the past participle of the verb naître. Naître, which means to be born. Let me see if I've got that. I haven't got that verb. Né. Moi, par exemple, je suis née au Royaume-Uni. I was born in the UK. So, because I am a lady, I have an extra E on the ending of that past participle. So that comes from the verb naître. So if you are one of my club members, you will have this handout appearing in your inbox pretty soon, and you will be able to fill in next to this past participle, né, this verb, naître, which means to be born. N-A-I circonflexe, T-R-E, to be born. Okay? Par exemple, ma fille, elle est née l'année dernière. Oui. Ma fille est née, elle est née en 2019. J'ai dû réfléchir un peu. Elle est née en 2019. So she was born in 2019. Last year, l'année dernière. Okay, so that's the verb naître. So if we were saying, for example, we were born 20 years ago, we were talking about, say, me and my brother, or me and my friends. Nous sommes, because you just have to use the verb être. Nous sommes, that's the present tense of être, for the new form. So if I'm talking about me and my best friend, Sarah, par exemple, we would say, nous sommes nés. So there's an extra E and there's an S, because we're both girls and there's more than one of us. If I was a guy and I'm talking about me and my brother, we were born, you just put an S on the end. You don't have to make it feminine. Né. So né, it means was born or were born. Okay, that's your past participle from the verb naître. Naître. Okay, so this is a similar thing. Let's have a look. I had to look up a sentence on word reference to give you an example of this. Okay, so here's a very similar verb in this sentence. Berlin, okay, est rené après. Berlin est rené après la destruction du mur. Okay, what does that mean? What does that mean, guys? Berlin est rené après la destruction du mur. I think there's an accent there. It's not written here, but there should be. So, Berlin was reborn. Okay, it was born again, if you like, after the destruction of the wall. So, when the wall came down in Berlin, Berlin was reborn. So, rené, there's né, which just means was born, from the verb naître. Berlin est rené, okay? Berlin was reborn. So if someone's been born again or reborn, that little re in front of past participle né means to be reborn, okay? So renaître, I'll show you how that's written. Renaître is to be born again or to be reborn, okay? So, let me show you. We've got naître and renaître. So you may not actually use these. So we've got naître, renaître and naître. So as you can see, rené, that's the masculine singular form, and né, basically the same thing, but we just got this re in front of it. So when you have a verb in French that has re in front of a verb that looks familiar, it means generally to do something again or to redo something. Refaire, par exemple. That could be to redo or do again. So there you go, there's that. And now the last one in this first column is like the opposite of being born. Okay? So, you may have seen this verb. Mourir. Mourir. Oui, c'est un peu triste ça. Mourir. To die. So this is the third verb we're going to look at now. Do you know what the past participle is of that? You might look at it and think it's an IR verb. Maybe it's mourir. Non. Je suis mouru. Non. C'est pas ça en fait. That's why it's irregular. So it doesn't follow the usual take the R off and it becomes mourir, like parti, sorti. That's why it's irregular. Mourir becomes mort. Par exemple, un exemple de ce document-là. Ah, Johnny Hallyday est mort en 2017. Johnny Hallyday est mort, il est mort, il est mort. He died. En 2018, non, 2017. Oui, 2017. Johnny Hallyday est mort en 2017. Rest in peace, Johnny. Johnny Hallyday is a French singer. He did some kind of rock stuff. Very, very famous. He died in 2017. Il est mort en 2017. So, what about if a lady died? So, the past participle there, if we're saying she died, you just add an E, okay? Elle est mort becomes elle est morte. So here we have an example of when the E at the end of the past participle changes not only the written form but also the pronunciation. So, il est mort, elle est morte, mort, morte, mort, morte. So you'll see that that sort of can be linked to the words mortuary or things to do with death. So if that helps to remember mort, la mort, M-O-T-R, M-O-R-T, is death. Okay, so elle est morte, what was the example? Edith Piaf, par exemple, sticking with singers here. Edith Piaf, elle est morte en what was it? 1963, selon Wikipédia. Okay, so according to Wikipedia, Edith Piaf est morte en 1900. 1900 is 1900. 63. 1963. 1963. She died in 1963. So if you're talking about they died, you need to know whether you're talking about men or women, but let's just imagine it's men, so let's get an idea. Ils sont morts. So you take the masculine, like by default, and then you just add an S. Mais si tu parles par exemple des femmes qui sont mortes, then it has to agree in gender and number. Ok? Voilà. Oui, c'est difficile, non? Donc, on a vu je suis né, je suis rené, je suis mort ou je suis morte. Okay, so there I've got a little sort of a slash, if you like, and then an E at the end because I've just got the masculine singular and the feminine singular. I'm not going to put the extra S and then the extra E and the S for the plural forms because it gets a bit messy. But the main things are that you recognise the verb mourir becomes mort or morte, and that you use it with the verb être, and that it agrees in the written form normally, always, with the gender and the number of the subject or subjects. Sometimes with that past participle mort, the pronunciation changes to morte because the E after the T makes the T sound. Okay? Renaître, non, naître, renaître, mourir. Né, rené, mort, morte. D'accord? Ok, les prochains 4 sont assez similaires. Vous allez voir. Ok, so the first or the last 4 on my list are quite similar. So if I show you that, venu, and then venu avec e à la fin. That probably looks quite familiar. Par exemple, je suis venu ce matin. Oh, je suis venu. I came. Je suis venu en France hier. I came to France yesterday. I wish, because we can't travel to France at the moment because of the lockdown and the confinement and all sorts of COVID related stuff. So it's a shame that I can't actually say this honestly. Je suis venu. So that's from the verb venir. So venir means to come, like to come to somewhere, to arrive at somewhere if you like. Venir. Je viens du Pays de Galles, par exemple. Venu. So instead of being, there's the full form, venir, you might think if it were regular that it would be veni, like sorti, parti. Je suis venu, mais non. On dit à la place, je suis venu, mais moi, je suis venu hier. E à la fin parce que moi, je suis femme. D'accord? So, ils sont venus hier. Par exemple, mes parents sont venus hier. Ils sont venus. So if you're talking about les enfants, tes parents, vos copains, ils sont venus, talking about a bunch of guys or mainly guys, you would use ils sont from être, and then the past participle venu, which means they came, with an S at the end. It agrees with the fact that there's more than one person in the group. Elles sont venues, they, bunch of girls came. Put an extra, well, you put an E in before the S. That's the order you do it in. Gender first, then number. Or just number if it's talking about a bunch of guys. So, venir becomes venu, and the three remaining verbs, past participles, are linked to this. So, this is the easiest one. So, we've seen renaître, to be born again, or to be reborn. So, revenu is very similar to venu. Je suis revenu il y a deux heures. I came back. To come back. Okay, so venir becomes venu. Revenir becomes revenu. So, let's have a look. Ça marche pas. Ça se passe souvent en fait quand j'enregistre des vidéos. Revenir. So I hope you're following. Venir is to come. Revenir is to come back or to come again. Come again. Revenir. Past participle venu becomes revenu. Voila. The next verb, very similar, but a slightly different meaning. Devenir. Oh, je suis devenue grosse. Je suis devenue malade. Je suis devenue mère. L'année dernière, par exemple, moi, je suis devenue mère. Je suis devenue, avec E à la fin, parce que moi, je suis femme. Devenue mère. Last year, I became a mother. Je suis devenue. Mais il est devenu père. Mon mari, il est devenu père. So, the past participles are generally written, when you look them up, in like the masculine form. So remember that these are verbs that take être as the auxiliary verb. So if you look at the past participle of venir and it's written venu, comme ça, or revenir, and it's written revenu, came back, to become, became, then that is something that you would use when you're talking about a male or a masculine object. If you're talking about we became, what did we become? Over Christmas, we became fat. That's not a good example because there's an S at the end of gros. we became tired. We got tired. So the verb devenir can sometimes be translated as to get, as in like got tired, got bored, got fat, got old, got whatever you became. Okay. In the new form, for example, nous sommes. Remember, we have, if you like. It's from être, so you don't use nous avons, you use some. Nous sommes devenus. There's the past participle. Make it plural because we're talking about we. Fatigué, par exemple. So here you have an adjective which goes with the verb devenir because we became tired. So the adjective also agrees with the number. Fatigué. S at the end because it's plural. S at the end of the past participle because it's plural. Nous tells you it's plural. And some is the auxiliary verb, the present tense of être, which is used with the verb devenir. That's how it works. So we have seen je suis né, I was born. Je suis rené, I was reborn. I was born again. Je suis mort, or je suis morte. Je suis venu, I came. Je suis revenu, I came back. Je suis devenu, I became, or I got tired, I got bored, whatever. Or I became a mother, I became a doctor. You can use it with professions, that kind of thing. Now the last one is also conjugated like venir, or those last three verbs that we've seen. And the past participle, hence, is very similar. But the verb is parvenir, parvenir, parvenir. So it's got the verb venir in it. This is harder to translate actually than come back, and become, because it's not so similar in English. If you can think of an equivalent that I'm missing, leave a comment or send me an email and tell me. Parvenir means to reach or to obtain or attain, like it could be to reach a place. I found a nice example. Nous sommes parvenus à la plage à 10 heures. We arrived or we reached the beach at 10 o'clock. So, nous sommes parvenus. Nous sommes parvenus à la plage à 10 heures. À 10 heures. Nous sommes parvenus à la plage. That's really messy. Excusez-moi, je suis désolée. Pardonnez-moi, l'écriture comme ça, c'est un peu en désordre, mais voilà. Nous sommes parvenus à la plage à 10 heures. So, parvenu, là, au pluriel, ça s'accorde avec nous parce que c'est au pluriel. Mais parvenu, ça veut dire we reached, we got to. Okay? Mais on peut dire aussi, par exemple, what's an example? To reach, or to obtain. Ah oui, it can also be, for example, here's another example. Nous sommes parvenus au parc à midi. So we reached the park at midday, or 12 o'clock, midday. Il est parvenu à gagner le championnat l'année dernière. Il est parvenu à gagner. So, the other way that you can use this, and often actually, parvenir is sometimes followed by the preposition à and then another verb. For example, il est parvenu. Il est parvenu. So that just doesn't have an S at the end because it's singular. It doesn't have an E because it's talking about il. Il est parvenu à gagner le championnat. Il est parvenu à gagner. So parvenu à gagner means he managed to win. So we have à, which is a preposition, and then a verb in the infinitive. Le championnat. Championnat. I think there's two N's. So he has managed to win the championship l'année dernière. Okay, so it's quite a complex list that I have here. It was actually quite difficult. I realised when I was doing some research for this to find irregular past participles that are used with the verb être. So there's this whole mnemonic. There's Dr. and Mrs. Van der Tramp, which will take you through the irregular verbs. So each letter in that mnemonic, doctor is like devenir, or A is D is devenir, A is like rester. It goes through a whole list of I don't know, 18 or 20 verbs that take être as the auxiliary verb, but they're all quite regular. Rester, tomber, aller, rentrer, venir, revenir. Those ones were irregular because they're on my list. So the ones that I found, there are only 7, but 2 I'd say are really useful. Je suis né, je suis mort, or je suis morte, to be born, to die. And then je suis venu, so the verb venir, je suis venu. Il est venu, comme ça par exemple. Mon frère est venu hier. Ma mère, elle est venue ce matin. Ils sont venus, avec S à la fin, lundi. That's a useful one, venir. But revenir, to come back, devenir, to become, or to get something, and parvenir are the other ones that also are conjugated, like the verb venir, which is useful, but the past participle is basically the same with a couple of extra letters at the beginning. So let's see, I'm going to say a few phrases here which are listed at the bottom of my document, so this will go out to club members. I'll say them in English and then we'll just translate them together. So, he was born. He was born. He was born. Remember, he was born is conjugated with être. Il est né. Il est né. Il est né. He was born. Festive time of year, we talk about Jesus. Jesus was born. Ah, il y a un petit écureuil. Let me see if I can get this little squirrel. Can you see that little squirrel over there? Regarde là. We don't normally see what's behind the scenes here, but il est venu ce matin et il est revenu. Et là, il est parti. Oh non, il est là. Il est parti. Il est disparu. So, that little squirrel, il est venu et il est parti. 2 verbs there that take être. So, let's find another one. He died. For example, Johnny Hallyday. He died. Il est mort. Il est mort. Ah non, je suis désolée, il est mort. He died. What about she died if we're talking about, say, Edith Piaf? Elle est, what's wrong with this? Elle est morte. Yeah, it's missing an E at the end. Elle est morte. Okay, on prononce le T. Elle est morte. Okay, let's have a look, something a bit more difficult. They came. For example, my parents came yesterday. My parents came yesterday. Mes parents sont, être is the auxiliary verb, venus hier. Mes parents sont venus. So we have the past participle here agreeing with mes parents, which is plural, and because there's a man in the couple, which makes up my parents, it defaults to the masculine. Mes parents sont venus hier. Mes tantes sont venues hier. Mes tantes sont venues hier. Mes tantes, my aunts. Mes tantes sont venues hier. Right, so we're talking about my aunties. They came. Mes tantes sont venues hier. Sorry about the reflections. Always difficult to get that right in this room. I do try. The light's changing as well. I've moved my desk close to the window, so the idea was to get more light. But actually, it's a bit tard. It's a bit late. Okay, so let's do one more. This one's a bit more difficult. So this verb can mean to reach somewhere, as in to get to a place. But it can also mean to succeed in doing something or manage to do something. Like he managed to win the championship. He succeeded in winning. So let's do he managed or he succeeded. Il est parvenu. He managed. Parvenu. Remember that could be followed by a plus a verb in the infinitive, any verb. Il est parvenu à vendre les maisons. What does that mean, for example? Il est parvenu à vendre la maison. He managed to sell the house. Bravo, bravo. Okay guys, so we've seen the verb naître, renaître, mourir, venir, revenir, devenir et parvenir. And their past participles are né, rené, mort or morte, venu, revenu, devenu et parvenu. Remember they're conjugated with être, so you need to know the verb être. Je suis, tu es, il, elle, on est. Nous sommes, vous êtes, il, elles sont. Plus the past participle. Most verbs that take être actually do have regular past participles, but remember, if it's the written form, you need to add an e if you're talking about a girl or a feminine object in the singular, and if it's plural, you need to add an s at the end, and if you're talking about plural feminine person or object, you add an e and an s. D'accord? I'm going to send this out to you soon, guys. Please like and subscribe if you found this useful, and if you want to join my French club, you'll get a document like this in your email every last Thursday of the month, as well as a link to this video and my expertise and time. If you have any queries, just feel free to get in touch. Merci beaucoup et à la prochaine fois. Au revoir.